Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to introduce a new family of bits for the shape origin that allows you to make boxes. Okay? And so this video is going to be like split in two. And the first one I'm going to explain to you, show you the bits and explain to you what you can do with them. In the second part, I'm going to actually show you on the shape origin how to do that. And the ones of you who like get it from the beginning and they're very experienced might not need to watch that. And the ones who want to know the details can watch the second part, okay? One of the disciplines of woodworking is box jointing. So you creating some kind of wooden boxes like this one here, where you can put stuff in it. And people obsess sometimes over the techniques, over how to create these boxes, how to do these joints, right? And then there's like people who go like, oh, if you don't know how to do these kind of joints, you're not like a woodworker and all these kind of things. I personally do not obsess over joints, and nor am I particularly good at them. Creating these kind of boxes is not like my passion, but sometimes you just need to do it, or like people ask you, oh, can you like create me a box for that and this? And you need to do it, right? And so there's different ways of doing it. And one of them is actually the most simple one, which is the one I used here, which is just by cutting out the boards in certain angles and gluing them together. Okay, let's look at that in detail. So imagine you have a board like that, a wooden board, and you want to fold it. So what do you need to do to fold it in a 90-degree angle? Here, you need to remove 90 degrees of wood, and that way you can then fold it, okay? And if you do that, it looks like that. As you can see here, this was a board, and I removed here and here and here, and also on the outer ends here, 90 degrees of wood. And that way you can then put this together, and as you can see, we can fold it and you get this box. And so the question becomes, how do you remove this angle, right? And you can do it with your miter saw, you can do it with a table saw, like there's different tools that will help you to remove this angle. But the important thing is that you remove exactly 90 degrees so you can create this box. And so that got me thinking, how can we do this with the shaper origin? Because I love that tool, and if I need to make a box, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do it with the shaper origin? And so that's possible if you use a V-groove bit. A V-groove bit will have a certain angle, and with that you can remove layers of wood until you get that angle, until you get the board that we've just seen, this one here, right? Basically to fold it. So this here was actually removed with the shaper origin. Okay, so I did this for, I had a 90-degree V-groove bit, and I did this and it worked really well. And then it got me thinking, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do different shapes, right? This is like a square, but what about a triangle, a pentagon? Like different shapes of boxes would require us to remove different angles of woods. So I started to do research about V-groove bits. And turns out there are, but they're kind of like, there's not a set of bits that will allow you, okay, build a square, build a triangle, and so on. You can get different angles from different providers, from different producers. The 90 degree is the most common one, but there's different angles and there's different qualities, different shank sizes. It's all a mess, right? And so I wasn't able to really buy all the right bits that I needed to do this. And so that obviously got me thinking, maybe I should have them created. So we have a set of bits that help us to create these boxes. So I worked with a bit producer on creating a set of bits that would allow us, with the shaper origin, to create these kind of boxes. And that's this here, the wooden sole Polygon box making set. Let's take a closer look. So the set here comes in this nice little box, and as you can see here, it comes with 5 bits. We have an angle of 51.4, then we have 60, 72, 90, and 120. And with these bits, we can now create boxes of all kind of shapes. You see here, we have a triangular box. We have the square, we've seen before. Then we have, let me see, this is the pentagon, 5 sides, like the Pentagon, the building in the US. And then we have a hexagon. Hexagon is 6 sides, this here, and then a heptagon, which is 7 sides here. So you can produce these very easily, very quickly, and I'll show later in the video how you do that. Let's take a closer look at one of those boxes to see the details and see why this is interesting, why it's interesting to use this technique. All right, so here you can see that this was all made out of one board. And as you can see, these lines here, they're pretty nice, pretty tight. These were all cut with this bit. And if we pay attention to the grain of the wood, what you can see is like, it looks like this continues, right? It's like the board is folded here and the grain continues along this box. This is not a very visible grain, so I don't know how good you see it in the video. And there's obviously one place where it's glued together, which is this one here. So here it breaks because here we have basically the ends of the board and the end on the other side. And so here it's not the grain, it's cut here, right? And you can see this is the bottom side and that's it. And similarly, you have different shapes. Here you will see it better with heptagon because you can see here we have the wood grain and you see here there's a different color, which then continues here and it continues. It always looks like it's folded. And here it continues. And here that's where it's glued together. And as you can see here, there's a little cheating going on because I used some wood filler here. It's like this glue line here was not really nice. It didn't close neatly. Okay, so that's what you can do with these bits. And as you can see, one of the glue lines was not that nice. And so why is that? Right? When you cut, I have so much stuff here. When you cut something like this, right? It's very important that the board is absolutely completely of the same thickness everywhere, okay? The entire board needs to be the same thickness. And if it's not, if you have a deviation somewhere, then when you cut it on one side, it will be a different angle as the other and it won't close neatly. And that's what happened to me in this place. Like it was not completely of the same thickness, and that's why it didn't close well. So you need to pay attention to that. Okay, so how much does this cost? I can sell this the set of 5 bits for 75 Swiss francs, which is about 90 US dollars. If you compare that to Woodpecker, like they sell a set of 3 bits for $130, then there's a set of 7 bits, which is 260 or something like that. These are carbide-tipped, so they're not solid carbide. The producer said like the prices, especially now with high carbide prices, would be astronomical. So these are carbide-tipped, which means that the blades, they are solid carbide, but the rest is not. I've used them extensively and they're really solid. They cut well and they don't break. I will also offer different bundles. As you know, like by this time I have a lot of bits in my offerings. So I'll leave a link to this box, but also a link to different bundles where you can combine different bits into bundles and get a discount if you want different bits. For the ones who want to buy this set, there is a little surprise. If you watch this video until the end, I will tell you a code word. And if you put that in the order, I will send you a free bit. Okay? So watch the video until the end and don't miss this opportunity because everybody wants to get some free shit. So much for these bits. Now let me explain to you how you can create these things with the shape or origin. So we'll move into the second part of this video, which is actually showing on the machine how to do that. In this demo here, you will see me using the bench pilot plus the workstation. You can do this without those, so it's not required to create these kind of boxes. You start this by attaching a board to your workstation with double-sided tape. After that, I am using here the tracer bit that I am selling, but you can also do that with any kind of like bit that has the right size, because what we want to do is we want to scan the board so we have it precisely in our Shaper origin. For this process, this new feature that Shaper Tools is offering, the probe rectangle, is really neat. So that's what I'm using here. And with this bit, I'm now scanning my board. So after scanning it, I will have a grid that shows me exactly the middle of my board and allows me then to create lines. Because that's what we're going to use here. We are using the pen tool, and I have calculated how wide I want the walls of my box to be. And then I go to the right place and I draw a line from the bottom of the board a couple of millimeters more. So I want the shaper to cut outside of my board, to leave it not exactly until the end, but a little bit more. So here I use 2 or 3 millimeters, and then I create these lines. And as you can see here, I place these lines at exactly the same distance from each other, because obviously every wall of the box needs to have the same size. What you can also see is that I set a line also at the end of the board, right? Because we need to cut out these angles. So where the board meets, where we glue it together, it also needs to be cut out. So this entire thing works. That you have, if you zoom out, you see that we have here, this is to create a pentagon. So we have a total of 6 lines because we have 5 walls, but we have also the outer sides. Now I take a bit from this Boxmaker set, and I take the middle one because that is the one for 5 sides, which has the right angle to create a pentagon. As a bit size, I go to engrave, which is like we don't need to say the exact thickness of this bit, because we will use it as an engraving bit even if it's removing more. Before you start working, don't forget, if you use this feature, this probing tool that we have to create the rectangle, it creates a shape on the outer side of the board. This one I go and delete because we don't need it for this project. I use very shallow passes for this cut, 0.5 millimeter per pass. You can go deeper if you want. It depends a little bit on your wood. The wood I used was mahogany, which is pretty dense. It's pretty hard. So I'd rather take it a little longer and do shallow passes. So you'll have to experiment what pass depth works for the wood that you have. And here you can see my bench pilot is cutting the line by going up and down and up and down and slowly removing the material. That way you get a really nice cut because it's really slow and doesn't use too much force. Once you have cut this, you can see here that's the board, and the outer pieces, they are like leftovers. I always use them to check if I cut deep enough. So you see here that on the one side and on the other side, we have cut enough. We can remove them easily. So I have set the right depth. The goal is to cut out the depth until you reach the double-sided tape without cutting into the double-sided tape. That way your bit doesn't get too dirty, but also you leave enough wood outside so you can fold it and then glue it and it looks nice. Then we can remove this entire board. And what I do is I remove it with the double-sided tape. Pay attention that I do not remove the double-sided tape here because we will need that for gluing. It's actually really nice. Also, you keep the right order of the different pieces of your box, and you don't get a mess where you afterwards need to figure out how to put them together. And what you see is I put from the double-sided tape, I kept this second layer when I removed it. So now I put it again on so it doesn't get too sticky and it doesn't like stick into my fingers when I move it around. So that is comes in handy for gluing afterwards. As you can see here, this is the pentagon shape and it fits pretty nicely. We can work with that. Now I measure the pentagon, the inside, because that is the measure I will need to create the shape inside my box. And I didn't, you could calculate that if you want with advanced math, but I don't think that's necessary. You just measure it. Maybe you add a little bit more to it in the beginning. So if you measure 7 centimeters, maybe you take 7.1 afterwards to create your shape and you move downwards. You see here, now I attach a board that I will use to cut out the floor, basically the base of my box, which is obviously a little bit of a bigger shape compared to the walls. Now I go into the create mode and I choose the polygon creation, which is really nice. So you have it all on the machine, on the device. I say I want 5 sides and then I set the height of my shape. And the height is what I measured before when I measured out my pentagon. I set this on the board and then I use again the shape origin to cut out this shape. And as I told you before, I on purpose chose it a little bit too large because I want to move down to make sure I get the right size. And here I use my 16 by 16 bit to remove enough material, because if afterwards I will want to try out if the floor is the right size. And for this, I need to be able to insert my boards that I cut before. So here you see, this is my first try and I wrap it around to see if it is the right size. And as you see, it's not. It's too big. It doesn't close here. So I go and I work with an offset. Here I set an offset, and depending how much you're missing, it's more or less. So here I went for an offset of 0.5 and started cutting and removing material again to get the right fit for my box. So here you see I try it again and I cut out a couple of tries. This was not the first, so I moved down with a couple of offsets until I got the right fit. But here you see it fits really nicely, and we can work with this. And then I glue the box together. So you see me here putting some glue on the board and then obviously also on the sides of the floor of this shape. And in this case, it's not easy to clamp. You can come up with fancy clamping mechanisms, but I do the really cheap way, which is I just put it together and then I take the tape and with tape, I attach it and glue it this way. It's a little bit sloppy, I know, but it's good enough. And that's it. That's how I made these boxes. This is actually what you've seen in the video. So this is obviously after some sanding, and then I put some oil on it. But at the end, that is pretty much the shape that you've seen me build. And that way you can, if you take the right angle, you can create the triangular box here and the square and so on. And you can actually go crazy on the sizes, right? The workbench has a maximum of about 40 centimeters of width. So with the workbench itself, you can go up to that size per wall. So imagine every wall here would be 40 centimeters. That would be a huge box. So that's kind of the maximum you can do with a workbench. But if you work without the workbench, you have pretty much no limits on what you can do. But there is one limit, which is how thick those walls can be. These bits allow you to go up to a thickness of 11 millimeters, except for the triangle. The triangle is a maximum of 8 millimeters because here you have this bit is really, really wide, you see. And so that's the maximum width that you can use with the shape of origin. It's 1 inch. And so from the depth, it's 8 millimeters. That's the limitation that you have. Now, there is one little surprise I want to give to the first 100 people who buy this set. And I told you before in the beginning of the video that I will tell you a little code word that you can put on the order So you get this free goodie. And what is the free goodie? This is kind of crazy, and you will laugh at me. This is a bit that is pretty much the same as the one you need for the triangle. So that's, let me see, 120 degrees. But you can see it's bigger. So why is that? I had this set created, and when it was already created and when they sent me the pictures, I looked at that bit and I was like, oh wow, that looks really wide. And then I had it measured and it's too wide to use with the shape origin. The shape origin has a maximum of 1 inch width of a bit. If it's larger than that, you will damage your shape origin. So I realized that, oh wow, this is not going to work. And I told them, we need to create a smaller one that is compatible with the shape origin. So we did that. The one in the box is perfectly compatible with the shape origin. But they had already produced these bits, and I had to pay them because it was my fault. So I told them, well, send them to me because I will give them as a free goodie to the people, the first 100 people who buy the set. You will get this bit which you cannot use with your shape origin. I repeat, you cannot use this bit with a shape origin. I will make sure to label it. If you do use it with a shape origin, you will damage it. So I don't want that. But you can use it with a normal handheld router. And so maybe that can be helpful to you in the future. It's better than it just like laying around in my workshop. So if you want to get this surprise free bit, write in the comment field when you order it on Etsy, don't rush. If I see you put don't rush there, I know you've watched this video until the end, and I will give this to you for free because you rock, you watched my video. Well, that was it. I hope you like this set as much as I do. Please leave your comments in the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and see you around.